You're listening to the Unwritable Rant podcast with your host and bourbon-soaked storyteller, Juliette Miranda.
Well, hey there, y'all. It's Juliette Miranda, and you're listening to the Unwritable Rant podcast, episode 263. I have a bourbon-soaked story for you today about dressing room dry humps and mounting a work of art. Cheers, y'all. Well, obviously, good news, I'm not dead. And neither is this podcast. At least, not yet. But I realize now that it was pretty optimistic of me to think that I could keep this show going while writing 2 novels, living in New Orleans, and starting a new podcast, which, by the way, is called That One Thing. It's a cooking podcast, and if you like food, you should give it a listen. And because I'm such a nice person and my guy is such a good producer, we'll put a little link in the show notes if you want to check it out. What can I say? My life right now is very different than when I started this podcast 7 or 8 years ago. I mean, hell, I'm different. But that's a good thing. I think it would be a serious bummer if the only change I saw in myself between then and now was the size of my liver. I mean, it's really kind of amazing, the evolution that we all go through and the things that we learn. And I gotta say, the biggest lesson that I have learned is that it is okay to walk away from things that don't work. And here's a perfect example. My guy and I were on vacation recently, and we met this couple at the bar. They were about our age and had been dating a few months, so they seemed nice enough, and we shared a few rounds of drinks with them. 2 days later, we saw just one half of that same couple. It was the woman. And I said, "Hey, where's your guy?" Well, her response blew me away. She says, "Yeah, he's at the airport. We were driving each other insane, and I don't have time for that bullshit, so I sent him packing." Wow. I had so many questions. I did. I mean, these two were in Aruba, for fuck's sake. Couldn't they just suck it up and stick it out? Well, it turns out that was her point. Why be miserable on vacation? They were 2 adults, and they far preferred parting on reasonable terms than growing to hate each other, especially while in Aruba. And she was saying that he could have stayed and gotten a different room, and it was his choice to leave early. She, however, decided to stay on and enjoy herself. I gotta admit, I was impressed. If only I had had that kind of confidence in my 20s, I could have saved myself from so much hell. Like the kind I had with a guy that I will call Raphael. Oh, Raphael. He was, if nothing else, absolutely beautiful. He had the effortless beauty of a Renaissance painting, all ethereal and glowing and chiseled. People would stare at him in awe when he walked down the street because they weren't entirely convinced he was real. That is how beautiful he was. Our relationship started like all good doomed relationships do, at the mall. Sherman Oaks Galleria, to be specific, about 6 months before they closed the entire mall for a complete renovation. Any signs of its fast times at Ridgemont High glory had long eroded, and all that was left were a few junk stores, a food court, and a half-empty department store. The mall was right across the street from my apartment complex, making it the perfect place to buy a shitty birthday gift for the shitty guy that I was dating. He didn't deserve a present, much beyond a shovel to the side of his head, but because I was young and dumb, buying a present seemed like the easier option. Raphael was coming out of a toy store when I spotted him. His long red hair was glossy and completely unlike the bleached and dyeing disasters that I was used to seeing on the Sunset Strip. And he was so perfect. He had this just simple, casual look, a black t-shirt and jeans with holes at the knees, and he was just tan enough. I mean, it was everything that he should be. And in his arms, he had the biggest goddamn teddy bear I have ever seen, which really only added to his appeal. Because only a good guy would carry a teddy bear, right? Oh, y'all, this is such dumb logic. And I cannot tell you how many friends I have who've said the same thing when they see some dude with his dog or a baby or whatever squishy object he happens to be carrying. And it enrages me when I hear this. Psychos are just as capable of buying teddy bears as the rest of us. That doesn't make them good people. But did I know that then? Fuck no. I just wanted to know Raphael. I wanted to know all about him. So I prance right up to the guy, yank that bear out of his hands, and I give it a long and loving embrace. I smile at Raphael from behind all of that fluff, and I say, I'm sorry. I just couldn't resist squeezing something so cute. And he responds exactly as I hoped by suggesting that he should be the one squeezing me. We exchange names and witty banter, and I am so immediately smitten with the guy that I invite him to join me for a burger. That poor bear becomes my hostage when Raphael seems a little bit reluctant. So I take a few steps toward the escalator, and I'm dangling that bear over the rails. Raphael looks intrigued, he does, but not entirely sold on what I know is my pure awesomeness. So he says, yeah, I kind of got to get that bear to a birthday party. And you would think that I would just return the bear to the guy when I hear it's a gift. But no, I just hold it closer so it can absorb all of my perfume. And I look at him and I say, come and get it. I was such an asshole. And that did it, too. Raphael collects us both, and then he escorts us not to the burger stand in the food court, but a remote hallway where we proceed to make out for the next 20 minutes, because clearly I am classy. When we're done, Raphael gives me his phone number, but takes the bear, sadly. And he goes off to what I later learn is his girlfriend's birthday party. And this, y'all, was the unpromising start to a very long game of will he or won't he. You see, Raphael was a guy who honored his commitments to a point. It turns out that he's committed to this girlfriend, some chick that he'd met at 16 and promised to love forever. Now, the love part may have been true enough, but the dude was a little bit more flexible when it came to his digits. He had no problem rounding third base with whatever chick he happened to meet, which earned him the reputation among every strip groupie for being a massive clit tease. Yes, the guy was a musician, no surprises there. He was the lead singer of a band that I will call Thundermoth. And I had to hand it to the guy. He could sing. I mean, really well. He'd light up whatever stage he was on like a fucking god. And, well, you know me, y'all. I made it my mission to land him. For the next year, I pursued Raphael in the most unsavory, underhanded way possible. As his friend. Oh yeah. I entangled our emotions like only a true sociopath can. I empathized with him over every fight that he and his chick had. I commiserated with him about the unfairness of the music industry, all the while gently nudging him toward my end goal. Me. Every couple of weeks, usually after he'd had some giant blow-up with his chick, he and I would hook up for a casual dressing room dry hump, always leaving me wondering, will he or won't he ever get his shit together? Really, the whole thing would have been terrifically unsatisfying if, well, I wasn't already cheating on my boyfriend with 2 other guys, neither of whom had any moral qualms about getting naked with a taken chick. Raphael may have believed that he was in a state of relationship grace, but I knew better. It was just a matter of time before our mutual infidelity killed one or both of our relationships. I was just biding my time. Even though I hated, and I say hate, and I can't even emphasize how much I despised the guy that I was with. Ending the relationship would mean that I'd need to find a new place to live. And I didn't want to do that, at least not until I was confident that I'd have somebody, preferably Raphael, to help me with my boxes. But I did not, and let me stress this, I did not expect Raphael to move in with me. I just wanted to date the guy openly. I wanted to have sleepovers minus the pajamas. And then we could see where things went naturally. But as fate would have it, our lives imploded almost simultaneously. Well, I hit my breaking point when my boyfriend put his fist through the wall for no better reason than a mix-up with our Chinese food delivery. After that display of completely irrational physical emotion, I didn't exactly trust him to handle a breakup kindly, so I fled the second he left for an out-of-state gig. I was barely 2 weeks into a comfortable life at my new dingbat in Studio City when Raphael shows up on my doorstep with a trash bag full of clothing. Big surprise, it would seem that his chick didn't share his view on casual no-sex hookups, and she booted him out after finding his lips planted on their neighbor. Raphael swore he just needed a place to crash, and because I was a fucking moron, I let him in. We immediately become a couple. Which, quite honestly, in the beginning was kind of amazing. Like, I didn't hate the guy, which was a revelation in itself. Sex with him was like mounting a work of art. And Lord knows I loved showing us off at every rock club in the valley. To be clear, though, I established very specific ground rules with the dude right up front. If we're going to couple, then we're going to be exclusive about it. No make-out loopholes for either of us. And Raphael agreed. He did, but still, it wasn't long before I started to suspect we were no longer a twosome. His band rehearsals became more frequent and lasted longer. His clothing and his hair started to smell like sandalwood. And sometimes he was just so unnaturally edgy, I knew he had to be either screwing around or shooting up, which of course made me unusually edgy. Drama always does, and I had more than I could handle at the moment. In addition to my fears that Raphael was sharing his lips and a needle, I was dealing with an unsavory situation at work. Technically, I had been hired as a production assistant for a popular television show. It wasn't a very fun job. It was one of those jobs where you mostly make food runs and buy supplies and are treated as menial slave labor. I had either done my work so well or so poorly, I wasn't really sure which, I was given a new responsibility. And that? Coordinating hookers for the show's star. Oh yeah, that was my official job. Every day, I had to anticipate what this guy would be in the mood for. Blonde, brunette, big tits, no tits, and I had to order accordingly. It was like a choose-your-own-call girl adventure, and the consequences for choosing wrong were horrendous. To this day, I have zero tolerance for any kid who whines about their mean boss making them work on a Saturday or, oh, maybe they just don't feel valued. Fuck you. Until you have had your boss fling a Coke mirror at your head because the prostitute you got him was too short, you do not get to talk about being unappreciated. So there. Clearly, things in my life weren't exactly working. But did I change my circumstances? Did I walk away like a grown-up? Of course not. Of course I didn't. I sat around miserable and I whined and complained and I was convinced that life could not get any worse. And it did. Life always gets worse. Of course, it was all courtesy of Raphael. I'd been wondering, will he or won't he come clean for weeks? So I can't say it was all that surprising when he comes to me one afternoon wanting to talk. He found me sitting by the pool, sipping from a jug of Sunny Delight that I had doctored up with vodka. At the time, it was my favorite day drink because I considered it, healthier than just drinking straight whiskey before noon. So Raphael sits down next to me. He is shirtless and beautiful, and he's wearing swim trunks that are patterned with tiki dolls. And to this day, I distinctly remember that moment and looking at the tiki dolls and thinking, well, shit. That tiki doll wasn't a good omen for the Brady Bunch, and I know it's not going to be a good one for me either. And big drum roll here, Raphael was cheating on me. Just not exactly with whom I'd expected. It turns out Raphael had found God. Apparently, he was so distraught and racked with guilt over how, according to him, I had forced him to leave his girlfriend, that he started going to church. It was there that he found the glory of the Lord, whose forgiveness washed away all the grimy sins and shitty behavior that he didn't want to be accountable for. And he was in it full force. He'd quit the band, he'd quit his job, he was all in on the church. And I just sat there and I'm thinking, I've driven guys crazy. I've definitely driven them to drink, but this is the first time that I had ever driven one to God. Just like I had been so very smitten that day I saw Raphael with the teddy bear, he was smitten with the church. Attending Mass led to confession, which led to group sessions in choir, and that brought him to me that day with a stack of literature to read so that I too could find the same holy redemption. And he says this with a complete straight face. You can be redeemed too, Juliette, you can. And I'm looking at him and I'm going, wait. Are you trying to save me? He motions to my leaded orange drink and the general funk surrounding me as if to indicate, yeah, you kind of need to be saved. And he's all, you know your job is not healthy. You are not the person you should be. So he makes me an offer. He'll take care of the rent and the bills if I will join his church and give up all of my wayward work and vices. Think of it, he says. Think of how good it will feel to let God guide you. And you know, the thing is, he wasn't wrong. I mean, he wasn't right either. But I knew I definitely needed guidance. So I'm quiet for a moment and I'm weighing my options. And the way I see it, I have two choices. I can kick my boyfriend out and lose his rent money, but maintain my full salary for, serving up whores and coffee to an abusive cokehead. Or I can quit that job, lose the salary, but get my rent paid by a Jesus freak who wanted to save me. Y'all, I chose the cokehead. I did. I didn't choose the cokehead because I expected him or even that job to save me. I did it because I knew that I would eventually learn how to save myself. And that is everything. I had a bit of an ulterior motive in telling you this story today. And that is in what I've learned, knowing that you can walk away. Now, don't misunderstand me. I'm not walking away from anything right now. Life is fucking awesome. But like I said earlier, I have changed a lot since I started this show. And I have to tell you, I am at the point where I'm not sure these are the stories that I want to tell anymore. Believe me, I have loved having the opportunity to do this. And I love having you listen to this show and share in my life and my stupid misadventures. But I think it's time to change the narrative. I think it's time to start telling some different kinds of stories. Now, I don't know yet what entirely that means for me or this podcast. What I do know is that my guy and I have a lot more adventures to share and, well, I have a lot more things to say. I don't know how or where or when, but I hope that you will stick around with me for the ride, wherever it happens to go. Thanks so much for listening and for being there. You guys are awesome. And don't forget to check out my other podcast, That One Thing. It's a cooking podcast. It's fun. I tell stories. I tell about the one ingredient that can change your cooking on every episode. It's a lot of fun and pretty damn cool. Otherwise, I'm going to be out there finding some new bourbon-soaked stories to tell y'all. Cheers.
Go to theunwritablерant.com and sign up to get early access to interviews and new videos. And don't forget to connect with Juliette on Twitter @MorningNeurosis.
Girl, you was pretty as a Sunday morning, standing on the corner at Carondelet. What you say we make our way up to Bourbon, a couple hurricanes and a hand grenade, and get blown away and let the chips fall where they may. If it's all the same, what you say, bon ton, hey, pretty mama, I can smell the gumbo. sweetest taste of honeysuckle on my lips. Good God Almighty, I can hear the trombone. Every heart ought to beat to a rhythm like this. Come a little closer, honey, let me hold you. Nothing tastes better than a bourbon kiss. You can be the flower on my magnolia. Every heart ought to beat to a rhythm like this.